Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome our facilitators. Co-lead and creative director, IDEO.org, Patrice Martin. And co-lead and executive director, IDEO.org, Jocelyn Wyatt.
Welcome. Thank you all for coming. This is the final design lab of CGI, and we're thrilled to have you all here. I'm Jocelyn Wyatt, and this is Patrice Martin, and we co-lead IDEO.org, which is an innovation and design nonprofit that focuses on poverty-related challenges. And now we'd like to introduce the quick video to give you a framing of the context of today's design lab.
2.7 billion people on the planet live on less than $2 per day. A family living in poverty barely stretches their income to provide basic needs like food, fuel, water, and schooling. Even if a family can tend to its basic needs, they generally can't save money in case of unforeseen shocks. When a disaster strikes, they don't have the resources to help them get back on their feet. A flood might destroy a year's worth of crops, taking away their income. They might not be able to rebuild their house after an earthquake. Or they may have to borrow money from a loan shark who charges double-digit interest rates in order to afford medicine to save their loved one from a serious illness. If they survive these shocks, this borrowing will mean families sink deep into debt, ensuring they are trapped in a cycle of poverty they cannot escape for years. In many cases, even if these shocks cannot be foreseen, preparation and mitigation is far cheaper and more effective than reacting to these disastrous situations when they happen. Protecting communities from the aftermath of shocks is essential to allowing them to have the means and the hope to escape the trap of poverty. How can we protect the poorest people on the planet from debilitating shocks?
So to start us off, we would like to invite the founder and chairperson of BRAC, Sir Fazle Abed, and the chairman of the board of the Swiss Re America Holding Corporation, Walter Bell. They will provide us with some remarks to frame the design challenge that we're about to tackle this afternoon.
Thank you and good afternoon. And welcome to this Design Lab session, a new innovative format for CGI. So Fazle and I would look forward to a very lively discussion that we hope will lead to new solutions that will help protect the poor from the shocks that you've seen on the screen and the otherwise kept them into the cycles of poverty. I'd first like to provide us a consistent framework on the nature of shocks and the challenges that they bring with them. Shocks in the context today, as seen, are unplanned events that affect individuals, communities in a very negative way if they're not prepared for them. As I always said, life will steal your dreams. For the purpose of this exercise, we will look at shocks that affect the poorest, i.e. those living on that less than $2 a day, and restrict ourselves to examples relating to health, agricultural and livelihood, and housing. The numbers already given, 2.7 billion people living on less than $2 a day. In many of these countries, the majority of them are women. The segment is also where we see a tremendous population growth. In summary, this is a segment that cannot and must not be ignored by us. And I'd like to give you a sense of the challenges that we are up against. Crop failures, often less sudden but equally as tragedy, and are as a type of weather that bring on these agricultural events that destroy harvest and create food shortage. Many of you will have read the recent articles about how the corn crop in the U.S. has gone through a severe drought this year. Productions will be at least 13% lower than it was in 2011. This decrease will have a subsequent impact on corn prices and will be particularly pronounced in the developing markets where people may spend 25 to 50% of their income on food. If we further consider that this drought will not only lead to more expensive food prices, but also more expensive seed, fertilizer, that will also cause an inflation front that will push poor households further into debt and destitution. So why are we struggling to find solutions to these shocks, particularly in the developing world? Let me share with you some insights, at least from our positions in the reinsurance industry. And I'll focus on 5 different areas. One is data quality and availability. Insurance, as well as many other products and services, rely on good data. In the case of agriculture, data on farms, crops, planet, and harvest. Therefore, we need to invest money and resources into data gathering so that we can then share that data. Certainly, the public sector can also play a key role working with farmers' associations on this information. Education. Whether we are discussing the impacts of shocks on small or large farmers, it is critical to provide the expertise and knowledge around the value of risk management and help them become smarter consumers of insurance products. Cost efficiency. Any solution must be efficient, reliable, and trustworthy. Additional costs and inefficiencies are borne by the farmer who in turn passes his prices on to the consumer. Solutions must be cost and efficiency conscious. Financial resources. Though we often talk about teaching a man to fish and teach a man to fish and you feed him for a lifetime, we may also need to support him to buy that first fishing rod. Well-designed solutions that create financial buffers to shocks sometimes require a little grease on the wheel. Partners are very important. Finally, finding the right partner is the last piece of the puzzle. To echo the words of President Jim Young Kim of the World Bank, let's find the partners necessary to build the pilot and prototype programs to test the new ideas, and let's do it now. What are the benefits of these actions? Well, clearly, lives being saved, better standard of living and stronger economic development, which in turn means improved physical and mental health, greater opportunity for education, and then on the national level, the ability for our country to invest and diversify its economy. Providing people with tools to better manage these risks will reduce uncertainty about the impact these events will have on their lives. Reducing uncertainty, in turn, means that the poor can better plan how to allocate their scarce resources, whether that means food, time, or money. For the population living on less than $2 a day, reduced uncertainty can mean the ability between being able to provide some education to a child, which is a key if a family is to escape poverty. In a moment, Sir Fazle will share with you a number of examples of solutions that they have tried to build a safety net designed to help the poor. But before I conclude, I just wanted to share one quick example from my personal experience. In Haiti, the microfinance company Foncosi and the international NGO Mercy Corps have helped set up a new company called Micro. Micro provides Haiti's micro-entrepreneurs insurance against the economic aftermath of severe natural catastrophes. It's a first-of-its-kind, scalable model, micro-insurance that's geared toward the poor. Consequently, when a major rainfall in the south of the country resulted in widespread flooding, mudslide, and loss of life, Micro could help the poor individuals eliminate their debt and receive cash support to help reinstate their businesses, repair their damaged houses, and replace assets. Now, I've been the insurance commissioner in the state of Alabama for 5.5 years, and I've seen firsthand the positive effect that insurance premiums and checks can do in helping people rebuild their lives. But in the case of Haiti, seeing the borrowers and reading their stories, I realized that these payments are the last line of defense, and between the individuals maintaining their livelihood and falling back into the fatal spiral of poverty. The ultra-poor are particularly affected by the shocks and would gain the most from intervention and protection. typically risk-averse, the ultra-poor are unable to invest in long-term resources because they don't have that discretionary cash. Without these resources, they remain stuck in the cycle of poverty. For them, the consequences of shocks are very far-reaching. Thank you, and I look forward to the discussion.
Thank you. I think it's my turn to give my view on this issue. But before I do that, I'd like to comment on Clinton Global Initiatives. This year, they're trying to do this initiative focused on design for impact. What do we need? What do we mean by design for impact? And to me, firstly, any program that one does has to be effective. And then, once it is effective, then you have to make it efficient. And once you have done both those, and how do you do that? Effective program to make it efficient. You routinize tasks which are essential and cut out those which are not so essential. And so you are effective and efficient. And then, of course, you want to scale up things. Unless you scale up things, you are not going to have an impact. So what I want to say is this, that many good programs remain small and beautiful but never have any impact. So please think that this year's Clinton Global Initiative is looking for impact. So we are talking about effective programs which can be scaled up to reach large numbers of people so to have an impact. And that's my first comment about this. So whatever I do, what I have tried to do throughout my life over the last 40 years in development is looking at what could be effectively done in a small scale first, make it effective, and then try to make it efficient, and then go out for large sums of money to try and scale it up throughout the nation to have an impact. And that's what I did in 2001 when we had 8 million borrowers, microfinance borrowers, between myself and Grameen Bank's Yunus. Together, two of us had more than 4 million borrowers each, microfinance. But we found that poorest people of Bangladesh were not accessing microfinance because they're too poor, and their community in which they live, they think that, these people are too poor to be able to borrow and repay loan. So what do you do about them? And we found that about the poorest 8% of Bangladesh's population are so poor that they don't really deserve microfinance. They need help, other kinds of help. So we designed a program. Firstly, initially, of course, the pilot project has to be small. So we had 75,000 families with whom we started working together for 2 years, holding hands, transferring assets. Instead of giving 10,000 taka to buy a cow, we gave them a cow. Transferring knowledge, training, sending their children to school so they don't also become another generation of very poor people. And the fourth thing we did was holding their hand and then provide healthcare service. So these families had support of different kinds, asset, and also stipend, if necessary, because they had to feed themselves. So, and stipend, monthly stipend. And for 2 years, we did that. An average cost per family was approximately $300. So $300 having an impact on a family's life for 2 years we invested. And then we thought that they could become borrowers, microfinance borrowers, and then get out of poverty if they're good enough. 5 years later, we do a study. We find that 95% of them are better off than they were when we graduated them out of our system. And more than 80% are actually improving their lives. So that's the Esther Duflo of MIT. And they do randomized control trials, and they have done that now on this. And we find that there was an article in the last, I think about a month ago, and in The Economist, showing that the $300 actually doesn't make that much of difference. But what makes the difference in people's lives is the hope. Suddenly, a transformation happens in their lives, and they're working harder and to transform their lives into something other than what they have always thought, that they are no good. And so that is what happened. So that program has been immensely successful, as a result of which we have now, BRAC has now, the next phase, another $280 million we raised to take it to another 500,000 families. And what has happened also, that we are now replicating in other countries like Pakistan and in South Sudan, BRAC is replicating. The World Bank and Ford Foundation, or CGAP and Ford Foundation, has funded replication in 8 countries, in 10 projects. And one of the most successful ones, of course, is Ann Hastings in Haiti. Oh, she's over there, and she can tell you more about what she is doing. So that program has done exceedingly well. So that's one thing that one could do, and we are not. And we are not really talking about just the poorest of people. Then what happens is that Bangladesh is ground zero for climate change. And we are having problems of floods, cyclones, and all kinds of things. And how do you prepare for that? BRAC has been working on all these issues, trying to find solutions to problems which is likely to occur in the future, which is occurring now. Salinity is already coming into the soil of Bangladesh. So saline-resistant rice varieties, drought-resistant rice varieties, crops, submergence, there are floods, more often floods coming in, so submergence-resistant varieties of crops. What kind of new crops which could be grown in saline soil? We're trying those out, creating new kinds of seeds and the cropping cycles. What kind of things work best in our society? So basically, I'm coming to the end of my 7 minutes, and I think this is so really getting prepared for the change that is going to affect many people's lives, and how do you do it with the best solutions, and how do you have an impact on people's lives? That's what the task for all of us today. Thank you.
Thank you both for that thought-provoking introduction. Please. Who here has been to a design lab thus far in the conference? Okay, so we have a couple hands, but we'll still introduce you to the concept. So what we want to do with these sessions is to be a little different and to tap into the collective brain power in this room and roll up our sleeves and dive into the issue of resiliency for the poor. And the way in which we're going to do that is, as we started with framing this conversation first with experts and provocations on ways in which we can solve this and understand the issue. Then we're going to dive in and just start talking to concepts and coming to solutions, and we'll work together as a team. So you'll all be asked to get to know your table mates, and we'll jump in. From there, we'll have you all pick a solution to focus on and share back with the group. The purpose of this session is, of course, to explore new ideas and to explore concepts that, as we heard, we want to get to scale, right? We want to be able to figure out how we make them efficient and get them to a place where they can reach as many people as possible. But first, we want to find out where we start, right? And that's really the purpose of getting creative and thinking about this from a different perspective. So we're just gonna go for it, and this is gonna be a little different, and we're gonna have fun, we promise. And I'll turn it over to Jocelyn.
So the first task that we're challenging you with is to introduce yourselves to people at your table. So
very difficult.
slide. All right. So if you could just quickly, rapid fire, you guys have about 3 minutes at your table. Say who you are, where you're coming from, and then have a really quick conversation to share your experiences around how you within your organization have designed for resiliency. So we're going to say go now, and we'll let you know when to come
And this
back.
doesn't necessarily have to be a professional experience, but whatever you've done in your life that's connected you to this issue, that might be useful to then give your team now other ways to think about this. Okay, I'm going to stop everyone, but you will have time to continue this conversation, I promise. The one thing that we want to share with you before we set you off to start generating ideas are brainstorming rules. And this may seem counterintuitive when you're coming to a creative session, but the reason why we do it is because it's a very important tool for working together as a team and being as generative as possible. So I'm going to run through these quickly. The first is to encourage wild ideas, because this is the time to do it. It's like if it doesn't happen in here in a brainstorm, it doesn't happen. And you're not necessarily going to get to innovative or bold solutions if you don't give yourself the permission to come up with a couple of things that are pretty wacky. So I would encourage each team to try to at least have a couple that just seem totally out there. Defer judgment. So this is building off the previous rule, is that if your teammate does something that feels incredibly... thank you. Good, feels incredibly wacky, just let that go. And instead, just continue to contribute your own comment. The next slide is build on the ideas of others. So if something feels like that's not exactly how you would phrase it, instead of making a judgmental comment, build on that idea. Say, well, I'd like to build on that, and my idea on top of that is blah, blah, blah. Go for quantity. Here we're in the opposite world of quality matters more than quantity. We want to have lots of ideas so that we have a diversity of perspectives and things to choose from at the end of this session. One conversation at a time. This one can be difficult to manage, but it's really critical that everybody is hearing you, or else the idea doesn't get as much time as we would like it to have. And the last is stay focused on a topic. We're actually going to split into 3 different topics during this session, and again, it can be very tempting to go off in tangent directions, but it's really for the benefit of the brainstorm if everyone stays focused. And be visual. So visual ideas always get remembered. That's like my plug for visual ideas. So if you can draw a picture, please do. Everyone says they can't draw, everyone can draw. Stick figures count, we love them.
And so we're just going to show you, so you have a sense of what's come out of the previous design labs, the very simple sketches that people have been able to do, and the quantity of ideas. And this actually came from a session yesterday, and this table didn't win for quantity of ideas. So you can imagine how many it's possible to come up with in a really short time frame. So we're going to move on to the brainstorming questions then. There are 3 of them. So I'm going to run through them quickly, and then we'll come back and we'll give you each 6 or 7 minutes to brainstorm on each of these 3 questions. So the first is, how might we design for health resiliency? So here, think about preventing illness, for treating illness once it happens, for how to make the consequences of illness in a family less detrimental to that family's economics and health outcomes. The second is, how might we protect and secure livelihoods? So here we're thinking about jobs, employment, income. We're thinking about financial service products. We're thinking about how we can secure and make more stable livelihoods possible for people. And then the third is, how might we design the built environment to reduce disaster risk and enhance stability? So we're thinking about family housing and shelter. We're thinking about community spaces. We're thinking about both temporary and permanent housing. So now if we could go back to the first one, which was on health resiliency, we are going to dive right in now. Keep in mind the brainstorm rules. We're going to give you 6 minutes at your table to come up with as many solutions, and you have Post-it notes on your table along with Sharpie markers, and so we would encourage you to use those, one idea per Post-it, and then you can put them on the mat in the center of your table as a way to capture those ideas. So go to it.
This is going to feel incredibly rushed, but creativity thrives under constraints. So just go for your 6 minutes.
All right, we're going to wrap up now and move on to the second brainstorm question, which is how might we protect and secure livelihoods?
So if you didn't come up with a lot of ideas in the last round, you can make it up in this section. So just firepower.
All right, and last one. How might we design the built environment to reduce disaster risk and enhance stability? So, final brainstorm session.
Okay. How'd that go for everyone? We see lots of ideas. So we're going to move on to the best part, and that's where we actually pick a design or a concept to further develop. So this may seem very challenging, as I know I see lots of ideas on the table. The best thing to do, I find, is to sometimes bundle a bunch of things together into one more robust solution. So there's a couple of ways you can do this at your table. You can use the gold stars that are available and be very democratic about it and vote. Or you could just do it through conversation and consensus. But the goal is to pick one idea to further develop. And Jocelyn's going to be our lovely model here. And we have a worksheet to assist you in this process. And so again, we want you to be creative and visual around how you express this idea. And so some teams previously really went for it here and even got 3D with this solar example. And another team put their money where their mouth was and invested in a particularly interesting concept. So what you're going to do is give your concept a name, very important, then describe it. There is a section for a customer journey, and so what this means is we want you to think about all of the critical moments in your solution. So how does someone find out about it? What is their first experience? What's something that happens over time? Why would they be loyal, or does this retain them? So adapt this to how it fits with your solution, and then get creative and explain it to us. Be visual. Go for it. We will check back here in 10 minutes. One idea. Yeah. Across the board. Okay. Finished? How's everybody feeling? Okay. Juice is flowing.
All right, so first we're going to ask a table to share. So if you believe, and we're going to throw out a few of these prompts, but if you believe that your table has a concept that is in great service to the end user, so in this case, someone that's living on less than $2 a day, raise your hand and share the quick headline of your idea.
Okay.
I guess this is the mistake of raising your hand without looking about how many other people are raising their hands. So our idea basically is to move to create mobile interfaces for goods and services, whether they're jobs or health services, that are accessible via low-end mobile phones and low situations of connectivity. And so it's creating low-cost interfaces for service delivery, supply chains, and that kind of thing.
Fantastic. Thank you.
Mobile pods.
Hold up. We have another question that may be suitable, but all right. We'll let you share. We'll let you share.
We're similar, but what we did was Chuck had a great idea to make, we call it Calling Health, and you'd actually earn health insurance through mobile phone loyalty. And because so many of the poor have mobile phones, that if you went through a certain provider, you would get health and potentially disaster risk insurance, because we know a few of the barriers to encouraging the poor on insurance is to convince them that they have to get insurance for a bad day. So this would actually be earned. But we also thought there was a role for government in this to back up and potentially subsidize the mobile phone companies to provide this health, and that they would also make their public health facilities usable for the call on this insurance. So the mobile phone company could also direct you to the nearest local clinic, but it could also make sure that the government was involved, and even government and state-owned clinics could use it.
So we just heard two great ideas that have potential for scale. But do we have another idea that someone thinks this is ripe to be scaled?
Yeah? All right. There you go.
All right. So our idea was an educational to produce and deploy. Oh.
This is good, guys.
All right. It's kind of building on these two ideas, and it would be the production and deployment via mobile devices of an educational film series for the ultra poor. We would partner with emergency health expert organizations that have a good understanding of the top 10 things that the ultra poor need to do to protect their health, to be health resilient. And we would create films, microfilms, 2 or 3 minute pieces that are highly educational and entertaining in the local places, in the local languages, that could be sent via mobile devices and sent through local health workers, and also sent through and also screened in community events. And then there would be some sort of an incentive attached to that, where they could earn points by watching these films, and we would be able to track the education levels for health resiliency amongst the ultra poor.
Great.
Now, does someone have an idea that could be implemented tomorrow? Something that would take very few resources?
Okay, we've been convinced that, and I guess by default I'm speaking. So our concept is called Banking Against Disaster. I can't lift my bank.
Oh, beautiful.
We're very creative here. So the concept is that in remote villages where there is lack of access, lack of communication, and also oftentimes illiteracy, we are proposing to build silos, a silo like this, which is elevated, especially in areas of flood, which would not just bank grain, but also bank essential medicines and animal semen, as we were told, which is essential, and also be a bunker, a location for people to come to in the time of disaster. And in order to do this, we would incorporate all of civil society, the government, the community itself, private sector. Am I missing anyone? It's all in this paper. You're welcome to come and see. And then through involving all of them, we would do this in an education/entertainment event in a village, in order to communicate to them how we're going to do this together. And then we'll build it. And after building it, we re-educate, we make our bank deposits, and we hope we never have to use it.
Great. So these have definitely been bold ideas. Does anyone have an idea that they think would get them written up in the New York Times? All right. Okay, well, we can hear from both of you.
I propose that we take Canada for all the climate-affected people, like from Bangladesh, that will need a place to go to.
Wow. All right. Who wants to top that?
Okay, this is not going to get us written up in the New York Times, but we do. But we like our artwork, so maybe we'll get into MoMA with this sculpture. Okay, so can you see it? It's sort of. I don't think we can build this tomorrow, though. Okay, so the idea here that we focused on was farm resiliency and crop insurance, and we have a holistic 360-degree multi-stakeholder approach. Did I forget any? Oh, it's innovative, too. Okay, so the idea here is that we help farmers be resilient from crop failure due to any cause by building on local indigenous networks and models. That's an important concept, like savings associations or cooperatives. We protect and incent adaptation. So what this model is basically there's an early warning prediction system of possible stressors to the environment, farm environment for the next year, which of course is delivered through mobile phones. Can you see all the mobile phones in their hands? And that can inform farmers what to plant, what not to plant. Then you work through associations and co-ops to share information and create risk mitigation pools of resources, or they could be granaries or et cetera. Although we didn't think of that animal semen. That was a great ad. Then you work on crop diversification and choice of crops, so that if some crops are more resilient or others are not, but the monoculture crops are in and of themselves risks to farmers and the environment. Then you include environmental protections with crops. So this is a river. This is a wetland protecting the crops. And these are the new diversified crops. And this is our biotech corn over here. Then you have continuous conversations and problem solving with communities. We thought this was an important addition because often in development we don't continue the conversation with the community and go back to solve problems. And then, let's see, high risk tolerance by donors. You engage local banks, and then we had this nutty idea that you could take sister cities in the United States and have them underwrite or support the risk mitigation program of the local bank. So that was our 360-degree holistic, innovative solution.
So any last table want to present? All right.
Okay.
Yes.
We're going to wow you. If you thought that was ambitious, try this. We'd like to introduce you to the Circle of Lifeboats. So we're in a marginal community just outside Dhaka in a floodplain. And when the floods come down, all our houses start floating because they've got flotation devices underneath them. And so on the roof of the houses, we also have gardens. We're growing very nutritious crops so that everybody has good immune systems. They're resilient to any disease. And we have a little plant clinic, and they can bring their crops to the clinic and see if there's anything wrong with the crops and if there's any blight coming. We've got a mobile phone tower in our village, and it does a whole range of things. Remind me now. Oh, yes, of course. We have sanitation. Sanitation and flooding is very difficult. So this is biomass, and you get your compost, you put it up in your garden. Through our mobile phone, we have thousands of things. We've got unmanned satellites or something. Anyway, this little community, it might have to go in a couple of stages, but the key concepts are resilient to floods because they float, and eco-nutritious health education concept. Anybody want to add?
I thought that was great.
Yes, I thought that was great. Thank you.
Wow. you all have accomplished a lot in 8 minutes. So great work.
So, how are you guys feeling? Any comments about this process or about the ideas that you came to in this session?
Does anyone have anything that they feel like may have changed the way that they were looking at this issue, or maybe something that they take on with them from this? If not, it's still valuable. Don't worry. Yeah.
So to wrap up, we'd ask that one person at your table who might be particularly excited about the idea that you came up with, or for whom it might be particularly relevant, if you could just write your name on the front or back of that sheet. So CGI kind of has a contact person related to the concepts. We also encourage you to exchange contact info with one another. I think probably the most valuable thing that comes out of this is just getting to connect with other people. And then if there are any of the ideas that you heard in this room that you guys are especially excited about following up on, please feel free to talk to the CGI people outside the door at the commitments desk. And otherwise, we will wrap it up here and send you down to the final closing plenary. Thank you.
Thank you all.